Hello everyone, Jack Delahy here, founder of CollegeConsulting.us, and in the upcoming video, which we'll put right after this intro, I wanted to show it to you. It's only 6 minutes, but it's a recent video of actually me helping out a parent in our program who asked a really thoughtful question about SATs, standardized testing in general, the test optional landscape. And I want to point out 3 items in the video that you'll see. The first is, in general, I talk through the target that these days, in 2023 as I'm recording this, any student should strive to hit with their standardized testing. And I'll give you a hint, that's typically the 25% mark of accepted students. If you want more information on that, I'll link in the channel to actually the resource that I think generally you can use to help identify what that mark is for each school, and that's CollegeSimply. The second, though, is I do a deep dive, and this is probably the most important part of my answer. Right around the halfway mark, so the 3 to 4 minutes into my answer, I talk about something called the common data set. Now this is, if you're ready to get next level detailed, a really valuable resource that many colleges utilize and actually put out there for the world to see. And it goes through in detail a specific university or college's admissions data. And it goes into detail such as the percentage of students who submitted an ACT, the percentage of students who submitted an SAT, how a school even views a standardized test. Is it extremely important, somewhat important, not important? You can go through, I do a screen share and actually show 2 universities, 1 Vanderbilt and 2 Princeton, to show how 2 fairly elite universities even differ in their own methodology, which is why it's really important to understand that every school is different. But what that'll do is give you, the parent of a high schooler, the opportunity to then go and eventually assess each of your child's schools that eventually get on their school list. Lastly, I talk about submitting versus not submitting test scores and the data that we have seen in really only 3 admission cycles since 2020 in this test optional world of how submitting a test can possibly, at some of the top schools in the country, improve your chances up to 2 times, and I show the data for that. So I thought it was really helpful. It's a super quick video, but in 6 minutes, I hit on a lot of topics, and actually the parent in my program responded and said how thoughtful it was, so I figured, why not share this with the rest of the world who follows me on YouTube? Hello, Melissa. Super thoughtful question here, and I wanted to actually reply in this video since I think it'll help explain my answer because it is not black and white. So first and foremost, I completely understand the scenario. Just know, if either for health reasons, sanity reasons, or honestly just time and the desire to sleep more, Julia says, I don't want to take the SAT or ACT, she doesn't have to. Last year I had a student who just decided that, could have got an elite score, just decided it was not worth her mental, using her brain to try to study for that. And we just said, okay, just know that means that your grades have to be even more elite, your essays have to be more elite, your story has to be more elite. Every other aspect of your application just gets a magnifying glass on it. She then also applied her early decision to her top school, Villanova, got in, went, is now a freshman there, is loving life. So I just tell you that because there's an anecdotal example of not that long ago of a student where we just said, not going to do it. Now, with all that said, I want to give you all the data so you and we, if you want to bring us in, can help you all make a decision. First and foremost, I'm going to put the link to my webinar with Larry Cheung that I had a couple months ago. I'd really encourage you to watch from the 10-minute mark to the 12-minute mark, where Larry goes through and provides the data he has seen in terms of test optional. The answer, just so you know, is test optional absolutely helps a child's chances if the child has scored beyond the 50% mark of the incoming freshman class. If you get in the 25 to 50% mark, it seems like it's iffy if it helps. If you get below the 25% mark, it doesn't help. It actually can hurt. Now, so he'll go through and provide all that data if you actually want a source to figure out, well, what is the 25% mark? A couple places you can go. CollegeSimply is one of my favorites. If we go to CollegeSimply, we've got Vanderbilt up here that I can show you, right? You can check out, if you click admissions, you can search by any college that you want. And you can see, like, in this case, the 25% mark is 1480. 50% mark is 1530. You are absolutely correct that this is getting inflated more and more. Because if you don't get this, you just don't submit it now. So you're right. But the the truth of the matter is, if a student is able to get this mark, this will certainly help their score. Now, you're probably saying, well, at Vanderbilt, how do you know it will? Well, they actually tell you. Here's the common data set. Now, this is the most detailed information out there, and as you can see, when it comes down to this, right? Standardized testing, here's their scale. By the way, you can Google common data set for any school that you want. Most schools these days are putting it out on the internet, but they don't have to. Standardized testing, it's not deemed very important, but it is certainly deemed important. They tell you that right off the bat, right? So again, if you're able to get that elite score, which you can look up, they say this is very important. Now, if you're wondering, you can go down here and even see, look at this. 29% of last year's class submitted an SAT, 32% submitted an ACT. Amazing. So we're at 61% of all accepted students at Vanderbilt last year did submit a score. But that means 39% did not, right? So there certainly is a chance to get into Vanderbilt not submitting a score. Certainly, right? By the way, they also give the 25th, 50th, and 75th right here. So you can take a look as well. There absolutely is a chance. They bring in a third of their class who doesn't submit tests anymore. The problem is when you start looking at other schools. As you can see here, like I brought up Princeton for you. Take a look at this. Last year, I'll zoom in, submitting SAT 56, submitting ACT 35. That means 91%. Amazing. 91% of their incoming class submitted a test. They only admitted 9% of their students, Princeton, who didn't submit a test. So it does vary school to school. Vanderbilt, they're admitting a third of their class. Princeton's admitting a 10th of their class. I just bring this up because it really will be school to school, but I want to give you all the data that supports the decision that you're going to make either way. Lastly, here's an article from a group I follow, Admission Science. And you can see they're just talking about test optional in this. This was only a month ago that they wrote this, but I think the important thing for you to see is this, right? The University of Chicago says continues to be an important part. Yale, an important part, right? Princeton, an important part, all these. But then look at this. Here are the highlights. Finally, let's look at the preliminary data on acceptance rates for students who submitted scores versus who didn't. UPenn, 1.8 times more likely to gain admission. UVA, 1.9, 1.9, 2 times. So, as you can see, there are a lot of positives if you are able to obtain an elite test score. A lot of positives. Doesn't mean that that's the only way to get into a top school. No. And if you keep watching what Larry says, beyond the 12-minute mark, he actually goes into how he thinks that all this stuff that I'm talking about right now really more applies for kind of the top 50 schools in the U.S. As you get out of that need for you to have a strong test score starts to diminish. So I just want to put all that out there so you have the tools that you need to help answer this question. Perhaps Peter can shine some light on it too, but I just thought it was a really thoughtful question, so I wanted to give you all my thoughts. I'll link to all this stuff in the chat for you. Let me know if you have any other questions.